magic to work, you have to truly believe in the magic.
Hey, Magic fans, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Magic, an Orlando Magic podcast. And tonight you can see that it's down to just Geraint and myself. G, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Exciting times for me. I'm not going to lie. The countdown is well and truly on now. I'll be getting the suitcase down this weekend, and then I'll be, going through your Magic jerseys and trying to work out which to take. You've been there, Paul.
It's an essential part of the planning.
It is, isn't it?
You haven't planned your Orlando trip if you haven't gone through your jerseys carefully, picking out what you're going to wear, mate. So, yeah, I'm with you, mate. With you, 100%, pal, 100%.
Yeah, so I got a week to go. In fact, this time next week, I'll be on the plane. So, obviously recording on the Friday night.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, G. Good night. No, I'm excited for you going, mate. It to be a good trip, and you've got 3 good games, so I'm quite jealous. I'm not going to lie, mate. Not going to lie. But today we are going to talk about the fantastic announcement around Paolo Banchero becoming an all-star for the first time. We're going to talk about the wider selections on the all-star roster, whether there's been any snubs. We're going to have a little conversation about the player Jonathan Isaac, and a subject that G and I have a regular conversation on as we're watching games. And it seems to have blown up a little bit this week, is around the NBA officiating. So before we get into it, today's episode brought in association with Attraction Tickets, which is the UK's #1 provider of attraction tickets to and theme park hotels to Orlando, to their theme parks, the attractions, and also to Orlando Magic games. They sell the tickets at a very, very competitive price. So if you are planning your next Orlando trip, please make sure that you check out our link from the affiliates page on our website or in the description of this podcast and check out Attraction Tickets. You can also visit us at letstalkmagic.com. That'll have all our affiliate links along with discount codes that we may have. So, G, let's get into this, mate. We're going to start with Paolo. We have to talk. Paolo Banchero, rightly being named as a first-time All-Star, a reserve for the Eastern Conference team. So, G, going to throw it out straight away. What's your thoughts, mate?
Well, I was just telling you before we came on the pod, I'd gone to bed. I quickly got my phone, opened up the League Pass app, and I thought, right, I know the announcement's going to happen. They went to the West first. I was like, okay, I'll have to wait up a little bit longer. That's fine. And of course, they kept us waiting until the very last reserve was announced. So it was a little bit of a sweat on just to make sure that, Paolo got in. But thank God he got in. And boy, does he deserve it, You just got to look at, what he's done for the Magic, in his second season. He's come on leaps and bounds. Vegas had the Magic winning 36 games all season. You look at where we're at now, 25 and 23. So we're 11 games off, and we're recording this on, the 2nd of February. So you've got a good 3 months to get those other 11 wins and then push on. And then you've got to take into, the fact that we've been injury riddled, as we always are. So if you get a consistent roster in Orlando, Paolo's the man to, drive the franchise forward, and his plays being exemplary, in every which way. He's improved his 3-point shooting, his assists, and he's become that go-to player down the stretch. I think we saw a graphic at I think it might be in the end of the Spurs game on the Bally Sports broadcast. I think he was, very much in the top 10 of points scored in close games. So he's learning as he's developing and, getting put into these situations. I know we'll talk about this a little bit later on. It's only going to benefit him. And he's just turned 21. He's just turned 21. Scary, mate. Scary.
We've spoken many times about what he did as a rookie. And you look at what he's doing now as a sophomore. He's leading this team. This is his team. We all have our favourites, but I think every Magic fan has to acknowledge that this is Paolo's team. And he has become as you say, at his age, a massive voice for this team. He is a exemplary public figure for the organisation. And his play on the court is continually putting up figures that are significantly better than his rookie season. I know you would expect to see some development, but he is still, as we've said many, many times before, we saw it against the Spurs and in every game that we've played this week, facing double and triple teams consistently. And he has learned how to play with that pressure of being the star player on a team. And that's where the assists are coming up, because he is finding ways to make other players better around him. I know there's many times that people have made the comparison, but his play is becoming more and more like a certain player that is referred to as King. He's spectacular. The man is absolutely spectacular. And I couldn't be more delighted for him to be getting that accolade. Now, looking at the January figures, I mean, how good have they been? 25.8 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.6 assists per game. That is some spectacular figures, which saw him nominated Player of the Week again. Yeah. His last week's figures. But Embiid, not looking likely to be playing.
No.
With where do you think Paolo potentially gets the start? Now, before you say anything, we did ask Gary if he wanted to join.
Chime in. Yeah.
But unfortunately, for those that are aware, Gary isn't able to join us. He's got a little bit of an issue that's preventing him being able to talk properly. So he does. He says with his accent, he's very difficult to understand at best times. Anyway, this has made him practically unintelligible. So Gary, missing you, mate. Get well soon. But he feels that you're looking at Adebayo getting a start over Paolo if Embiid isn't available. But in his words, it's a hell of a victory for Paolo around the voices that matters, especially having no televised games. So would you say that Paolo gets the start over Embiid?
It's a tough one. We spoke a little bit about this off air, didn't we? I mean, if you look at it positionally and the fact that Bam's been there before, the logical choice would be just to fit Bam in there. But you made a fantastic point, Paul, in that, you look at the All-Star voting and the way that Paolo scored. He was obviously fourth in player ranking, whereas Bam was fifth. Okay, fair enough. In the fan voting, Paolo was sixth, whereas Bam was ninth. And then you've got the media ranking, Paolo fifth, Bam fourth. So obviously you have the weighted score. So Paolo scored 5.25, whereas Bam scored 6.75. So you could either go on that, or you could look at the numbers. So, obviously, Paul, you read the numbers out a second ago. Banchero, I think it's 23 points a game for the season, whereas Bam is 20. Obviously, Adebayo plays centre. He gets a few more rebounds, but then Paolo gets more assists. So it's one of these. Who does the NBA want to have as your poster boy for the NBA going forward? Do you push Paolo into the limelight, even though he's not a true centre? But you've got to remember, this is a front court positionally and not a centre. So, they've obviously skewed this to forwards and centres grouped. And it's not like it's a competitive game anyway, is it? You're not having somebody down on the block posting up. And it's a bit of fun. So there's no reason why you can't have Paolo Banchero starting based upon those facts. I know, you get Miami Heat fans, probably raging if Paolo did start, based upon the fact Bam's done it before. But for me, you could flip a coin, really, couldn't you? You really could.
Absolutely.
But end of the day, who does the NBA want to push forward? A 21-year-old, sophomore who's got LeBron-like numbers, as you've stated, or a very, very good centre in Bam Adebayo. But But, is he the poster child? Probably not.
I'm not going to lie, regardless of being a Magic fan, for that reason that you've just said, that it's not a competitive game. You're not necessarily playing for position. You're talking about, like you say, front court and guards. So you're talking about a front court position. And the spread of voting, I think that Paolo deserves it to get that start if Joel Embiid doesn't manage to make the game. I don't think you can argue against the three who were above Paolo in Giannis, Tatum, and Embiid. Phenomenal players, totally deserving those top three positions. To put Adebayo in ahead of either Jaylen Brown or Paolo, who finished joint on the weighted score, I think is a little unfair, personally. I can see the arguments for it, and this is nothing against Bam at all or a Miami Heat skew, because I actually hope that if Embiid isn't able to play, that the player that gets put in that Eastern Conference front court position is Jimmy Butler. I would hope that he's the guy who gets that spot, personally. I find Jimmy Butler quite a decent player, I'm not going to lie. Yeah.
Well, you've also got the problem with Julius Randle, obviously getting injured last Sunday.
Absolutely.
He's named as a reserve. Yeah. So, you're looking at likely two others joining. So, was it Butler? And you're looking down the sheet. Porzingis, maybe. Mikal Bridges. They're the sort of three that come to mind, aren't they? That missed out. Siakam. He didn't sort of feature on the voting results chart,
no, he didn't.
No. But that could be, the fact that, Toronto weren't having a great season, but obviously he's playing in Indiana now. Miles Turner's another one.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's a fair point.
Miles Turner's another one. So, we shall see.
So, please, any Miami fans that may be watching this, it's not a skew against Miami in this instance. We will accept that we do have it. But this is based on where people were in the voting. And I'm not going to lie, there's a little bit of rose-tinted spectacles as far as the Magic skew is concerned. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. So, let's talk wider than the Magic perspective and looking at the two rosters, East and West. Any snubs for you?
The one I was really surprised at, now I know they're not having the best season in the world. He plays for the Atlanta Hawks, who are 20 and 27, is Trae Young. He's a phenomenal player. 27 points per game. That's good for 11th in the league. He's second in the league in assists at 10.9. Everybody knows how good he is from downtown, 37%. So I feel that, he's potentially been snubbed, to get those kind of numbers. You expect to be in the conversation, don't you? But obviously with the record Atlanta have got, and this is kind of what we saw with Franz Wagner, I think, and Gary, in fairness, made this point in our group chat. Do you want
to put Gary's points across whilst you're doing that bit?
I haven't got them in front of me, so you
might be able to jump in
there. Yeah.
So no, but carry on, G, and I'll put what Gary had said.
But essentially, what happened with Franz Wagner is because of the Magic's record, he possibly didn't get the weighted vote when it came to Rookie of the Year. Whereas Scotty Barnes, the Raptors had a much better season than the Magic did. Even if you comparing them individually, there might not be much in there, but because the Raptors had a superior record, then he got the sort of edge. So I think that's what's happened here with Trae Young. When you look at some of the other players that got in, but there's a lot of them that, are very deserving. Tyrese Halliburton, and who's a starter. Jalen Brunson's been superb. Donovan Mitchell, especially the last 12, 13 games, has been on a tear. Tyrese Maxey, he's another one who's come into his own, scored 51 points last night. On the same night, he got, made an all-star. So it's hard to see who you could take out there to put Trae Young in, if you're honest, because they're all very deserving. And I think Jeff Turner made a point on the broadcast last week. we've got how many? 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 12 on the roster there for the Eastern Conference All Stars, shall we call them? An NBA roster carries 15.
Why not?
So
I agree.
Should you open it out a little bit more? I know there's injuries, but there are other deserving players like Trae Young. So go on, I'll let you carry on with Gary's point before I come to my other one.
Well, Gary, as I say, we wanted Gary to be included in this, so we did ask him for views on what we were going to talk about, and he said in regards to the Eastern Conference that for him, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and Trae Young particularly had strong cases to be included. Barnes having dropped off a bit recently and being outside of the fan voting. And outside of the fan voting, it won't have gone unnoticed that he's had a drop in form. Paolo, slow start for the season, but seemingly improves consistently and is leading a winning team. Whereas the Raptors, which are Barnes's team, aren't on a winning record. And he also added that team record was a legitimate argument, as you've said, around Scotty Barnes' Rookie of the Year campaign, which was the rule why Franz should not have been in the running, according to some. He also says that he can see the love for Derek White of the Boston Celtics, but how can you legitimately argue that he should be above, say, Tyrese Maxey or Trae Young in the guards? But he doesn't think that Trae Young is as widely regarded as we kind of think that he is.
Yeah, no, that's all fair. I mean, we're in a NBA UK fans group chat with the other sort of owners of other teams, and the Boston Celtics guys yesterday were like, Derek White's been snubbed. Derek White's been snubbed, and I'm thinking, come on, guys, grow up. Okay, they've got the best record in the East, but this guy's averaging 15 points. I know you can look past the points and the stats and the stuff that doesn't turn up on the box score. But Derek White's figures: 15.7 points, 4 rebounds, 4.8 assists. If you look at those stats, they're not top 45 in any category in the association. And you compare that with Trae Young, who's been snubbed, who's, like I said before, he's second in the league in assists, 11th in scoring. He's a gunslinger from downtown. I can't see how you could have Derek White in before Trae Young, if I'm honest with you. Yeah. And Derek White's, one of those glue guys that, a good team needs, good defensively. But this is an all-star game. The NBA want to put on a show. They want the most spectacular players, who are going to wow people, the oohs and the ahs. You're not getting that from Derek White, I'm afraid. So that's why Derek White is a no from me. So that was my only other point. So Trae Young I'd have in, but Derek White I wouldn't have anywhere near it.
No, I mean Derek White is a fantastic. He's one of those glue guys that does everything for a team. His importance to Boston goes beyond the box score, but that doesn't get you into an all-star game necessarily. We've seen it with other players in the past. I think Siakam is quite unlucky. I'm not going to say anything.
Would you have him in over Randall?
Personally, yes.
Okay.
Personally.
Right. I think you're looking there at records again, and the New York Knicks have been on an absolute tear this January.
You look at Pascal's been in figures, stats wise, he's ahead of Paolo, he's ahead of Bam, he's ahead of Jaylen Brown, and he's ahead of Julius Randle in certain categories, important categories. But having spent most of the season with that sub 500 Toronto Raptors team, that's probably, I think, impacted on his case. Bit later now, and the way things are, how he's playing, then I think he's been unlucky. I think that same argument goes for Scotty Barnes as far as the Eastern Conference team goes. But other than that, I think the only guy who I would personally look at and think you've been really unlucky is Butler for me in the Eastern Conference. But who do you take out at their expense? Because when you look down the Eastern Conference team, I think it's difficult to argue against some of the players that are included. With those, as you say, with the result of the injuries, there's going to be a couple coming. Both are going to be you potentially look at as being the front court guys with Embiid and Randall potentially being out. So you'd imagine that Butler's going to get in, and you would imagine that
either Porzingis or Bridges, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps Siakam.
Or Turner. Yeah.
But I can see where certain fan bases are saying, "Hang on, we're getting ignored here." So let's talk West, because my God, there's some controversy there.
That team, my gosh, that Western Conference All-Star team is something special, and that's where you put your money on. We love the East, but my gosh, that's got some talent, doesn't it?
It's frightening. Let's be honest. That team is absolutely stacked. So, is there anybody out of that, mate, that you would say you wouldn't have had in?
Oh, it's difficult to pull somebody out, isn't it? I haven't got all their stats right in front of me. And, you're looking at that starting five. That's a lock.
You can't argue.
That is an absolute lock. LeBron, KD, Jokic, Doncic, and SGA. No, you're not touching that. And then you look at the reserves. Anthony Edwards, he's having a great season. You can never take Steph Curry out of anything. Kawhi's having a good season. Anthony Davis, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns. If there was anyone I'd pull out, I'd probably be Paul George, just because I'm not that big a fan of him. But he's a very good player, very capable. So, you asked me to look at somebody I'd throw in. And I'm just surprised somebody from the Sacramento Kings hasn't made it. Yeah. Now, George is probably in the forward slot here. So you're looking at Domantas Sabonis for me.
Absolutely.
I just had a look at his stats, 19.9 points a game, which is good for 47th in the association. First in rebounds with 13 a game, and 7th in assists as a playmaking big man with 8. So you're averaging 19.9, 13 and 8. So you're flirting with a triple-double there every night. So I think he's very, very unlucky to not make the cut for me. I'd have him in. But then, it's so difficult. How about you, Paul?
But I don't see how you can argue against Sabonis's inclusion. They are above the Phoenix Suns, who have 2 All-Stars. They are above the Lakers. Sabonis is, I didn't realise this until we were sitting and doing a bit of research around this. He's 1 triple-double behind Jokic this season. Averaging 19.9 points in the a league leading 13 rebounds and 8 assists.
Yeah,
that's solid figures. I'm amazed, but the guy I'm more surprised at that didn't make it is the guy that we're going to talk about with Jonathan Isaac later on, Victor Wembanyama. Yeah. When I looked down that list, and it took me a second to realise that he's not included. I was genuinely shocked. I think I would have actually preferred to have seen Wembanyama play in place of Anthony Davis.
I would agree with that. Because he's a Laker.
I mean,
they're not having a good season, the Lakers, but they always get in just because they're the Lakers. Yes.
But I do genuinely feel for Wembanyama. I know we're going to talk about this.
Is he having a better season than Paul George as well?
Probably so. Again, I've not got the figures in front of me, but average.
Hang on, I'll pull them up now. Give me 2 seconds. I'll pull them up.
Over the last Wemby's figures, because I did the game preview, I've got a few bits still left that I didn't actually use. But averaging over his last 16 games, 24.2 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3.4 assists, and 3.4 blocks. And that is in just 26 minutes a game play. That's phenomenal.
It is. It is.
I
Right,
mean,
I've got his figures here, Paul. I've got his figures. Right. Points 20.6, rebounds 10.1, assists 3.1, while shooting 46.5% from the field, 30%. Was that? No. Where's the downtown figures? That's the last 5 games. And he's shooting, it's just 30% from 3, but he's not, he should be down on the block, really, shouldn't he? And then how many blocks? 3.2. And that's probably league leading as well, that.
Wembyama.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And as I said before, they want to have somebody as a poster boy for the league. Do you want, no offense to Paul George, do you want an aging star, or are you better off, showcasing the best of what is to come? He'll obviously get a run out in the rookies versus sophomores or whatever they do for that. But you've got to have him in there, I think. He is a talent, and, I'm sure we'll talk about the Magic playing the Spurs in a little bit, and, the effect that he had against us. So, and another one that's missed out, and I'm going on about the Sacramento Kings. It's almost like it's my second favorite team, De'Aaron Fox. But 27 points a game, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. But that Western Conference, man, it's just stacked. Absolutely stacked.
The other one
go on.
that I think is, in some ways, I'm not surprised. But again, when you go into it, you realise that how much of an impact this guy's having. Markkanen.
For the Utah Jazz, yeah.
This is a stat. Just doing a little bit of research. In players with at least 30 games this season, he is 4th in points per touch ratio. He's scoring that often. He's 18th in total threes and 26th in dunks. Only he and Jason Tatum are top 30 in the league in both those categories.
He's special. He's really come out of his, shell really, since he's gone to the Utah Jazz, in fairness.
I mean, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but if you're having somebody from the Clippers I think Harden's had a bigger impact on their season so far than Paul George has. I know that there'd be different categories as far as front and back court. I'm no fan of James Harden.
No, I guess the only thing with the Clippers is there's so many of them.
Yeah.
On the
team. What about Sengun, mate?
I know. He's having a fantastic. You could have a set third conference, couldn't you, and just have the Western reserves.
This is where I would love to see the rosters extended.
To
15. Because there's too many good players missing out.
So who would you? I mean, just going back to James Harden, there his stats are down.
Yep.
17 points a game, 8.5 assists. But he's shooting it well from deep. But obviously he's getting a bit more space in. Being on a talented team. Yeah, exactly. He's
shooting a career high 41.3% from deep.
We haven't even talked about Jamal Murray.
I know.
My gosh, the Western Conference is Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
Previous Defensive Player of the Year. Now, I know the All-Star game isn't made for Defensive Players of the Year, but is at least 4, 5, 6 players there that deserve some sort of, recognition that they're that good.
Right. It's this. I suppose it shows what a strength we have in the NBA at this moment in time. The depth of players. I mean, don't get me wrong. There have been many years before. This is a perennial discussion, isn't it? When the league announces these are the reserves, this is the first conversation that everybody has.
Yeah, who's snubbed? Yeah.
But it is an interesting conversation And that's one of the things I love about sport, in that it's not just about what's on the pitch in front of you or the court in front of you. It's that discussion. How many hours have you sat around a pub or wherever else discussing what's happened and what could have happened?
But do you know what else, though, Paul? Right? There's nobody on the New Orleans Pelicans there. There's Anthony Simons. Okay, Portland are not having the best season, but he's a bona fide scorer. We spoke about Simons, on previous podcasts. There's teams there not even represented or even mentioned. It's so going back to Sengun. Sorry, we kind of went past that very quickly. He's having a fantastic season. I know Gary is a big fan of Sengun. 21 points, 9.2 rebounds, 5 assists. But obviously, as we've mentioned previously, the Rockets, record has probably hurt his chances. Just one of those, isn't it? Kyrie Irving's. We didn't even mention Kyrie Irving. I'm just thinking of the other Texas teams.
Yeah,
absolutely loaded that West.
That's a comment that is on a lot of the threads on X.
Yeah,
no Kyrie, it's ridiculous. The guy's had an impact. I mean, he has found his form again this season. You feel for him being out injured when he's playing so well.
Definitely.
I know we've not always been complimentary about him, but he's found something again this season, and more power to him for it.
Yeah.
Coming back to Gary, his comments for the West, madness that a member of the Kings didn't make it. I guess again it's who at the expense of. He would have gone Sabonis over Cat maybe, which is I think.
But the Wolves are number 1 in the league in the West,
right? And he, Karl-Anthony Towns has found. For writing the preview for the Magic game against them, you look at he's found health. He's being effective on scoring. He's effective on rebounding. You can see why he's there, and as you've said, top of the West, leading the West.
Yeah.
He also said, though, as you just alluded to, also good to see the love for Sengun that's happening, and he might end up as the best player in that draft class. Open brackets. Sorry, Franz. Close brackets.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think I like Sengun. I enjoy watching his play, and I do think he's been quite unlucky. But the strength of that Western team, you look at the thing, it's genuinely if you removed Paul George, we'd probably be sitting here saying, but look at what Paul George is doing this season, potentially.
Yeah,
look at what Karl-Anthony Towns is doing. Look at, whether he's having his best season or not, and whether we are fans, Anthony Davis is an impact player when he is fit.
Yes.
So you're arguing about, well, if we put this player in, you've got to then, I think, justify who you're taking out and why that person is not that player for you. I'll be honest, mate. I think that the coaches in picking the reserves have done a good job, and there's an argument for every single one of them that got in, but there's equally an argument for a good dozen players besides.
Are you surprised Austin Reeves didn't make the list?
Do you know what? I haven't looked at the Western Conference final standings as far as voting goes. I know I've got the Eastern Conference ones. Never looked at the West. But yeah, it's amazing that he hasn't been in the lists of why has he been snubbed? Because I haven't actually seen his name in it.
No, I'm just going to pull up his figures just to see how he's doing this season. I know he had an absolute killer game last night. Obviously, the Lakers beat the Celtics without LeBron and AD.
That's what made it impressive.
In the game that we were like, can both teams lose? Austin Reeves, here he is. Right, so he's 15.5 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. So
his figures haven't been as good this
nothing
season.
to shout about, really,
No.
is it?
No, he's one of these guys who elsewhere he's probably going to be one of your main leaders as far as the team goes. You know, you look at what Kuzma has done now. He's gone away from the Lakers, but being on that team with that pair, you have a more supporting role, shall we say?
Yeah, great.
So,
Great.
Let's get into it, G. Let's get into the Magic and our road play. My God.
Yeah.
Before San Antonio, 7 of Orlando's prior 8 away games had seen a final score within 5 points. Can your heart cope with it, mate? How are you feeling about this?
I had to phone the doctors a little bit earlier today, and just get an appointment for my little heart. No, well, the good thing is there's no, even if we lose, there's no blowouts. And we haven't seen many, blowout wins either. So we're competitive for 48 minutes generally, which I guess is a good thing, especially, seeing as I mentioned before, we've had injuries. But this is just the growing, isn't it? And I think Paolo alluded to it earlier this week. Everything's happening for a reason. You grow, you get better, you find ways to get better. So as we're going through this, we're getting into situational, circumstances where we're finding, like the San Antonio game, you let an 18-point lead slip to, was it 3 or 1? I can't even remember what it was. So losing
25
lead
points, wasn't it, mate? We're 25 points up at one point against San Antonio.
Was it 25?
And they got back to within 3.
Yeah, within 3. So it's the learning, how to cope, losing leads, taking leads at the end, closing games out. Obviously, it's a learning curve for Jamal Mosley as well, as and when to put Jonathan Isaac in there for defensive purposes, seeing what works, seeing, which players fit well with each other, because he's not going to just have a, magic crystal ball. We all love that, but he needs to see them out on the court playing against the other professional athletes, drawing up plays, seeing what works. It's generally give it to Paolo, but Paolo's got to experience, having the ball at crunch time, 5 seconds to go. You've got 5 seconds to make something happen. And we've seen him make things happen, but at the same time, we've seen him give the ball up against Miami. So it's all learning and it's an experience, isn't it? So we've said at the beginning of the season, we expected maybe 43 wins or so, 41, 42, 43.
Yep.
And at least a play-in, if not a playoff spot. We're on course for that. We've had injuries. God, I mentioned it 3rd time in the podcast now. But it's literally all a learning curve. And we're basically finding out who we want to continue with. Because at the moment, you're looking at that roster and, Paolo, Franz, Suggs, and Isaac. I'd say they're the 4 untouchables. I don't think there's anybody outside of those 4 that you'd say, right, I'm not going to move him for, somebody who could better the team. Now, I know there's a couple of rookies on there and other players who are very valuable, be it the locker room or talent-wise. But it's about, growing to be where we want to be. Do you agree?
Oh, mate, yeah. I'll say what Gary said first. Magic road play for him, it's all coming down repeatedly to health and guard play. The other thing I would throw in there, and I guess it's partly related to guard play, that's our turnovers. The number of turnovers that we've committed in these close games has hurt us so many times. Pick up a couple of extra points from those empty possessions or those stretches where we go ridiculously cold. That fourth quarter in San Antonio was another example where we had turnover city and a long cold streak, we clean up on those small issues, and it is a fine margin. We clean up those fine margins, and we are a very, very good team. And we're not talking then about so many of these games coming down to these fine margins or being losses. We're then talking about potentially having kept the momentum to keep that lead that we've developed, or we haven't dropped so far back that the recovery fight that we've had to put on to get 19, 20 points back has been too little too late. And I do think we're very close. I think we're one piece, possibly two, away from being, I'm not going to say the finished article, but I will say a seriously good team. A seriously good team. Because at this moment in time, we can play anybody. At this moment in time, we can play anybody and give them a hard game. I think Gary's point about guard play is incredibly accurate. We've seen Cole have a slump. It was good to see him put 11 points up against San Antonio just to get a little bit of flow back. I think in this past week, we have seen, and you're going to love me for this, we have seen the importance of Markel. We have seen the importance.
Listen to me.
Right,
Isn't it?
You know full well I've never had a problem with Markel. I've had issues around his availability. That's been my sole concern with Markel. I can live without the 3-point shot necessarily being a thing of beauty or a thing of great accuracy. He hits one or two, fine. But he is such an important piece when it comes to that calm head, when it comes to creating the team a chance. That
pace as well.
The basket, that pace, that drive to the basket is electric. Yeah. And I think these games this week have actually shown his importance to the team. We missed him in Dallas.
I was just about to say it was the Dallas game. You know, we had a fantastic. You and I were messaging when we were watching that game. Yeah, and
we were. I think we were about 30 seconds within one another, weren't we?
We were. But you know, Jonathan, when we started, you know, the death lineup, should we call it? You know, with Jonathan Isaac in, with Suggs, Wagner, Banchero, and Wendell. You know, that lineup is enough to scare anybody. But then obviously Isaac was on a minutes restriction, so he didn't come out in the second half. I think if he'd come out for a couple of minutes in the second half, we might have won that. But the problem occurred in the third quarter. We, you know, had the third quarter collapse, but it was the ball movement, wasn't it, Paul? We were messaging about this, but if you had a legitimate, calm head point guard, and that's no offense to Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, they're both very, very good players. But Markel brings so much more. He can see the floor. He can just I say this every week. He can penetrate in the paint. He can just make little drop-offs. It just felt like we were settling for long jumpers all the time. And when Markel's not on the floor, I almost feel like we always go down to the nub with a shot clock. Do you find that?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. That.
And when we ended up just shooting up, you know, like a Jalen Suggs contested 3 or a step back 3 right at the buzzer, and not good percentage shots. So, yeah, totally agree with what you say about, you know, the what Markel brings. But
right, well, in the Dallas game, you can't be criticising Anthony Black anyway.
Oh no, it wasn't. No. His shooting was good, but
you can't criticise him because of the performance he put in. He was
brilliant.
He was
absolutely
huge
brilliant
for us, absolutely huge for us. But mate, we have to talk about that guy who you've mentioned him. It would have been lovely to see him for a final 2 minutes, 3 minutes down the stretch against Dallas. Jonathan Isaac. We can't ignore him. His play and that battle he had with Wembanyama. How much fun was that to watch?
Absolutely brilliant. You know, when they stood next to each other, you know, Jonathan looks a little bit miniature, shall we say, next to Wemby. But he absolutely held his own. And what I liked what Orlando did, just in general, was they weren't intimidated by him.
Yeah.
We went to the cup. We got a few shots blocked, but you're not scared. They got a few past him. But then, Jonathan Isaac's defense. Wemby was back on the floor. JI was back on the floor. It was quite a spectacle, wasn't it? And I think he was blowing at halftime when he was having that interview.
Yeah. I love that interview as well because they clearly gone through all the tape. They clearly got all the stats. He knew everything, but it was absolutely obvious that he'd walked out on that court and gone, "My God, this guy's big."
Yeah,
and he alluded to how good he is. I was super impressed by Wembanyama. I really think the guy's super. But you look at what Jonathan Isaac did.
He's such an asset.
He had
an asset.
21 points on the night Wembanyama did. But against Jonathan Isaac, he was held to 2 of 7 shooting by JR. And there were points where Wembanyama got the ball and went, "No, you can have it," and passed it to somebody else because he wasn't getting by. JI suffocated him. His defensive ability absolutely suffocated him. The 8 minutes that he had in Dallas, another defensive masterpiece. Like you said, it was so disappointing that we couldn't see him down the stretch for 2 or 3 minutes. I know that the team had got him on a minutes restriction, and they'd also said that he did have a minor niggle, injury, ache, whatever you want to call it. But for me, the positive side of things, aside from him having his first start since January the 1st, 2020, was that we actually saw him on a back-to-back. That was something we'd said the week before, that it would have been nice to just see him have a few minutes, even an 8-10 minute appearance.
Yeah.
It was good to see. And the way he played KD the night before.
Yeah.
My God. He absolutely tied that man up and held him to his second lowest scoring performance of the season, 15 points. He's had a week.
He has. So nice to get that W against KD as well. It's been 10 years. I want to get that Titanic gif out.
I mean, if the guy can stay fit and get increased minutes, he is still Defensive Player of the Year category, without a doubt.
Well, you just think of the potential matchups in the playoffs. Just say we get the 8th, after the play-in, and we play Boston. You put Isaac on Tatum, and if he can play 30 minutes, Isaac, in the playoffs, Tatum's going to have his hands full. So you're down at Jaylen Brown then. You got Jalen Suggs running around after him. It's not going to be that easy for the Boston Celtics. So, having Isaac there is just...
That's interesting what you've just said there about if he can play 30 minutes, because Gary, I know you've said you've not got those in front of you, but Gary's actually said, if JI can play 30 minutes per night and no injuries, we're a top 4 seed in his opinion. And his other words are, it's soul destroying knowing that we have this game altering star level producer and we can't use him as we want to. Fair point.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think it's time that you and I got onto a favourite subject, mate.
Here we go. Strap yourselves
in. Now, before we start, I'm going to say this is not us sitting here slagging it off. We are talking about another week that has seen varying quality of officiating across the NBA. And it culminated, I suppose, in Anthony Edwards' comments and him getting a huge fine. G, we've said you and I often talk as we're watching the games. We're often within a minute or two of one another as we are watching the next day. So we have almost live conversations. And so often the officiating comes up.
Yes.
I think the Dallas game that particularly bemused us this week with the
Dallas Phoenix.
But mate, the Dallas one, wasn't it? With the
4-3 throws to make 4. I've never heard of that in all my life.
So, G,
if somebody wants to explain it, they're more than welcome to come on and explain it to me, because I've never heard of that. That was
thoughts. Well, some of the issues here. we decided to try and think up was ways to make it better than we currently have in the league, and that is that has been acknowledged by, I think it's the commissioner of the NBA, that officiating needs to be improved and communication needs to be improved. So come on, mate, let's get into it. Do you want me to start with some of the suggestions I've seen?
You start with some suggestions that you got there.
Some of the suggestions I have seen as we've been reading about this subject this week is to have extra officials. I'm not sure how that works because you've still got to have consistency. I think the one I do like, and I've liked for some time, is trying to recruit ex-players into being officials. I think that's what I think. At the risk of slowing the game up, I think that the challenge system needs to be a little overhauled. I think you should be able to have an increased number of challenges, be it one per quarter, and keep it if you are successful. I don't think that's over asking.
No, because in fairness, to jump in there, we had a challenge against San Antonio, which, we blew the challenge in the second quarter, I think it was, and then there was a couple of incidents later in the game. Who was it? Dominic Barlow travelled and made a layup, and you're like, travel. We literally had nothing we could have said or done to see if we can get that overruled. Just one incident, perhaps, but the fact your hands are tied, it's just, it doesn't make sense. Or it should be at least, one per half.
Yeah, I agree. But certainly, I think you need more challenges, and I don't honestly believe it slows the game up that much more because we have, at this moment in time, we see delays as players are stood debating that call. You've already got those delays. Another one that I've seen,
and it gives you a chance to go and get a beer, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Think of the sales increases in the arena. Another one that I've seen is that the challenges are done by the replay centre and not the officials involved. So as they're
that's a very
not judging themselves. Suspensions is another suggestion.
I like that.
Some of them we'd never see.
No, I know. So, no names mentioned.
And another suggestion that there's been is that the officials are available for post-game interviews with the media.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much that actually improves the game. That one particularly. I'm a fan of ex-players particularly being officials. I am a fan of that idea. And I am a fan of changing the challenging system to have an increased number of challenges. I like the idea of the challenges being done away from the officials who've made those decisions and not part of that officiating team. And I also think that we have to look at some of the extending the items that you can challenge upon. Because at this moment in time, there's certain things that you look and think, that's a clear error, but it doesn't fall within the remit of being able to challenge. And I think so I think that there's little tweaks that the league can do. But for me, mate,
do you know what I'd have in?
Please.
In the Premier League, they have a table for the officials, and it tells you how many bookings that official's made, how many yellow cards he's given out, how many red cards he's given out. And, it's just readily available to anyone just to have a little look, probably for betting purposes, every weekend really. But if you had a league table on the officials, just categories like most overturned calls from challenges for one. Just so you want to help them. You want to try and make them better at their job. That's all you were asking.
And this is where I said that at the start of this that we aren't here criticising, because you're talking about a game that is extremely fast moving.
Yeah,
players are moving at great pace. I mean, we've all been sat in arenas and marvelled at the speed of these guys.
Yeah,
thought process, the speed that they handle the ball at, and you are asking people with the naked eye to look and pick up what is happening across multiple players at once. Now, I realise that one official is supposed to be looking at this part of the call, and the other one is looking at that part of the call, and the other one is looking where the ball is. Those sorts of things. But there are mistakes, and there are things that you look at and think, well, why is that not being looked at? One that you weren't happy with this week was we were affected by it with a pivotal point in the game, pivotal period, important play because it gave, I think, them the lead, was the 8 seconds.
Oh, Derek Lively camping a tent in the lane. Yeah.
And that was.
I think he probably had a sleep in there as well.
If you fail to notice, that was obvious live, and it was picked up in the last 2-minute report.
Yep.
Pivotal possession. Now, again, we aren't sitting here saying that the Magic would have won that game were it not for the officiating. The reason we lost that game is far and beyond anything to do with officiating, although we were frustrated by it. And there was more than one call where we weren't happy. And I think in that game, we did come up against, I won't call it the all-star, the star calls, but what I will say is the head flop. The player who exaggerates certain facets of their game. The
player we hope to be joining the Magic in a couple of seasons, who used to be coached by Jamal Mosley. And to me, he's not the only one, though, is he? I mean, to me, no. It's dishonest. It's not, it's not. That's not the official. That's not down to the official that player is playing in that way. And I understood. I thought that the flop call was being brought in to try and... Yeah, it's not been... But that's not been... No. We've had a couple of minor calls, haven't we? But we haven't seen it enough just to sort of, make... Which suggests that rule is too hard to implement. Yeah, or they're just too scared to do it. Yeah. So again, there's something else that I think can be looked at to help the officials, because that it's either too difficult... we see it week in, week out, watching football over here in the UK. The handball ruling is just ridiculously complicated. Nobody knows what it is, and it leads to massive controversy every week. And I think there are certain things in the NBA as well that it's too difficult legislation-wise to implement it properly, and that's where you don't get the consistency, which is where so many of us get frustrated. You don't get sometimes you're not getting consistency from that same official throughout the game, and there's certainly not each official calling it the same. You look at, what was it this week? In that last 2-minute report, we'll come to the Anthony Edwards one. Let's talk about that, where SGA sort of grabbed his arm, and the league that it wasn't called at the time as a foul. And the last 2-minute report doubled down on what was a clear error, called it, was it minimal contact? Minimal contact, inconsequential contact. Right, go back to last season, and Jason Tatum did exactly the same thing to LeBron James, and the league officials were apparently having sleepless nights about it. Because it's the Lakers. And doubled down on that same call, SGA on Ant-Man this time around. It doesn't make sense again. So you look at those two incidents and they are identical. And there's no consistency from the NBA officials on their
the overarching. I'm not talking about the individual official on that night. We're talking about the organisation. One, it gave them sleepless nights. One, it's minimal contact. Which is it?
No, I know. And then that same game, LeBron having that absolute tantrum on the floor.
Rant. Yeah.
Whereas, I'm just thinking, Vucevic and Bamba and people in the past have, slammed the ball against the end of the basket, and we get a technical, but LeBron's allowed to rant and have a little paddy on the floor, isn't he? But no technical for LeBron.
I think the closest we've seen for it this season was, and I'm struggling to remember which game it was, but Jamal Mosley was.
Oh, he was livid, wasn't he? Did I send you a photo on the group?
Yeah, his eye. He was, and I forget which game it was, and you could see that the official was kind of stood there.
I think it was Miami.
It might well have been, but you could see that the official stood there thinking, "I've got to let you have this one because you know what, that was an awful call," and we got a real soft one immediately after to kind of almost
balance
make it right.
Yeah. But going back to what I said about this league table, so I said, the most overturned calls, most errors in the last 2 minutes, and it's just a learning thing for the officials. And you mentioned Secaucus there, but any call or out of bounds stuff, I suppose it happens. Review in the last 2 minutes is done by Secaucus and not by the officials on the floor.
I mean, the one I'd like to see the last 2 minute report actually extended.
Well, like last 5 minutes.
Well, it's all right saying, look, it's done for
because they need to do it for the whole 5 minutes, really, because they need to do the whole 48 minutes.
Yeah, it's done for the last 2 minutes of what I can't remember what the parameter is, but close games.
But within 5 points, I think it is.
But if you have some horrendous call in the first quarter that has had an effect on the game, or you see your best defender hit with a foul that was never a foul because you've lost your challenge earlier, that's already affected the game long before those last 2 minutes. And it could be that you're 10 points down as potentially as a result, because you've had to sit, be it Rudy Gobert, or you've had to sit Jonathan Isaac, or whoever else it may be. You've had to sit that player because of that error that you've already used your challenge and can't use a second one.
You think these officials are audited on the full 48 minutes of games, and why did you make that call, etc. I know a guy who's a referee in the League of Wales, and it's quite robust what they have to go through, and they've got to justify every decision. So you'd think the NBA had something like that in place, but obviously that's not going to be something that you or I get to see. But yeah, all we're asking for is consistency. And for both teams at the same time.
I would a consistency, and I would like to see an openness, not just picking and choosing what they respond to on X.
Yeah.
What was it this week? The first one about one of the Magic ones where Doncic got hit by Anthony Black, and I don't know where people were moaning about that being a foul. It was a foul. AB did get him across the arm. I don't have an issue with that. However, to create that space in the first place, Doncic has extended his arm long before that. The first thing you learn in officiating is to look at all the angles. No, they got destroyed, didn't they, after that? It was really, really funny. Really funny. And they never chose to react again to that. But yeah, we just want consistency. So I think that's going to do it for this week, mate.
It will, mate. It will. Yeah.
So before we go, going to give a shout out, as we always do, to our Patreons. Thank you for the amazing support. Barry Carr, Paolo and Franz Warmth, Ollie Law, Gary Clark, Angus Craig, Dylan Holden, Alan Kane, Tom Soane, Mark Joss, Sean Moore, Liam Radbourne, Andy Linley, Stuart Benzies, and Drummy Drum. We genuinely appreciate you. I've missed out there. Paolo and Franz Warmth, I think.
No, you had him second.
Did I read that?
Yeah, you read him out.
I couldn't
He gets
remember if
a
I'd actually
second
read.
shout out.
Oh, well, there you go. After doing the game the number of errors I made on the game preview this week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing these later.
Oh, the Dallas, the
Minnesota game.
Minnesota game, 18 takes.
Wow.
18 takes. I will tell you all that I got 6 minutes through one of them, started reading stats about how Minnesota were 10 and 28 on the season and sitting 15th, and realised I hadn't edited the San Antonio Spurs details out and had to start that preview all over again.
Brilliant.
Yeah, wasn't good. But yeah, coming back to the Patreon, we do have different levels available. And if you would like to check them out, visit patreon.com/Let's Talk Magic or the link on our website. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and don't forget to set the notification button. Leave us your comments, reviews, questions. We love the interaction. Please share what we do. It helps us hugely grow the show. Follow us Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X. All the socials are at Let's Talk Magic. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. From G and myself, until next time, let's go Magic.